Welcome to Complete Kids Online, friendly discussions about autism and other developmental disabilities. Learn how working together is working better, one conversation at a time.
Hello, welcome to Complete Kids Online. I'm Gina.
And I'm Bob.
And we are joined with Richard today. Richard is one of our Board Certified Behavior Analysts in our Copperfield office. Hello.
Hi, how are y'all?
Good. Thanks for being here with us today.
You're welcome. Excited.
Richard, could you talk, just give us a little bit of your background about getting in and how long you've been in and et cetera, like your resume, if you will.
Well, my background's a little different than many people in this field. I started out as a parent and of a special needs child and was introduced to the ABA principles and the techniques because of the challenging nature of my child's behavior, and became very enthusiastic about what is possible in terms of intervening, even in a difficult situation. Later on, I pursued a master's degree in special education and had a teaching credential in California for special ed. I taught in a special education school, and that was somewhat associated with the ABA principles, not as much as I later learned that something like a BCBA would be engaged with, but it was an introduction to being in a group clinic classroom type setting. And I worked with 16 to 21-year-olds. And from there, when I moved to this part of the country from California, I was looking for, if you would, an encore career, and decided, somebody told me about the opportunity to become a BCBA, and for the next 3 years proceeded to pursue that. And even through COVID, which was an adventure all its own.
Oh, yeah.
Then this past year I passed my exam, and here we are.
Awesome. So you bring up an interesting point that I thought of as you were riffing us your history. What is it? Explain the differences of doing this through the eyes of a parent versus the eyes of a provider.
Well, that's an interesting element, because it's impossible for me really to separate my experience as a parent from my experience as a provider. It very much informs my approach to things like parent training, because when I did parent training, I did it with a behavioral psychologist, and there was no such thing as an RBT. There was no such thing as a BCBA. They had not been created yet. And the only thing I had was my wife and myself and what they could teach us. And it so revolutionized our life. I had a 3-year-old that was very aggressive, very violent. And we got actually banned from bringing her to 2 different speech programs because of her extreme behavior. And I was desperate. I had no idea what to do. I was out of options. I was out of almost hope. And I met this behavioral psychologist, and he changed our family in a big way. And so because it was me and my wife and putting these principles into practice, I'm a really big believer and try to live the idea that the best technician is the parent in terms of the opportunity. And so I try to take every opportunity I can to connect with the parents in a way that gives them emotional support, gives them informational support, gives them a chance to ask questions. You would be surprised how lonely many of our parents are. I knew that because the behavior of my daughter meant that there were many opportunities, social opportunities, that I could not take advantage of. We were not invited to certain parties and weddings and things like that because they were afraid of what my daughter would do. I lost friends because of that. Things like this were, and when I see parents today as a BCBA and I talk to them and ask them how they're doing, and a lot of what, if I can get them to open up about those kind of things, I hear the same stories. And so my approach in terms of at least the parent part of it is very passionate. I want them to understand that there are people out there that not only know what they're going through, but they also have tools to help. And that's why we're here. One of the most common phrases I use is, we're here to make your life better. We're here to make your child's life better.
Mm-hmm.
So did your background in special education and behavior help with your daughter's diagnosis?
Actually, it was kind of the other way around. I got my master's degree and my teaching credential after my daughter entered public school and was in the special education program. I decided that I had spent so much time working with her that this was a skill set that I was familiar with and was not afraid of, and could enter into that special ed environment and know something about what to do. And so it was kind of the other way. And I don't want to mislead anybody. My daughter is not on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. She suffered from a problem with her ears such that she was basically functionally deaf. And because of that, she was severely delayed in developing speech. But if you were to compare the frustration and challenges of communicating between one of our clients that's on the spectrum and the way my daughter was behaving at age 3, you would see almost identical behaviors. Mm-hmm. So my experience translated very well when I went into special ed and then later on into the ABA community wholeheartedly.
And you were saying that you were in that when you first got into it, it was kind of a new field that, ABA was in its infancy. Can you just talk a little bit about when, and if you don't know, that's fine, but when that kind of happened, Richard, and then talk to us about how you've seen it kind of evolve?
Well, there's no question that it has evolved. I'm not exactly sure about the timeline of the creation of the BACB and the evolution of the RBTs. Thankfully, that history lesson was not a part of the BCBA. But I can tell you the contrast between where I was with my daughter and where we are now. Mm-hmm. Is that when I was, like I said, we were in very desperate straits because nothing we were doing was changing her behavior. And when I say changing her behavior, I'm talking about a 3-year-old that managed to break my wife's nose. Yeah. And I didn't know what to do. And somebody gave me a referral, I think it was our pediatrician, to a behavioral psychologist at a wonderful clinic. And my wife and I took our daughter to him, and she proceeded to destroy his office. Climbed all over his furniture, broke his lamp. And after about 25 minutes of this, managed to have a nurse take her over to a playroom kind of across the hall. And once she was gone, the guy looked at us and says, "What are you going to do about this?" And we said, "We have no clue. We don't know what to do." Right. And he says, "That was the best answer you could give. Are you willing to learn?" And I said, "Anything. Show me." And that was our introduction to these principles. And I would go and meet with him, and my wife and I would go and meet with him and talk about the basics of these interventions, often without technical terms, but just saying, all right, describe to me what you're going through. Okay, here's the first thing to try. And these are the things that you need to be looking for. And these are the way that you're going to approach this differently. And one of those principal ideas is kind of could I develop a kind of a non-reactive mindset? Is that this is not a personal attack. She's trying to communicate. Don't take this personally. Just approach it from what does she need? What does she try to communicate? Give her some new tools. And it was all just the three of us. Today, of course, we have technicians that are trained to develop these skill sets. We have the BCBAs that have an incredible repertoire of tools and ideas and understandings, and a large body of data, a large body of literature that we can pull on. And none of those things were really available to a layperson like myself at the time. And now I come at the parent training or working with the clients from the standpoint of, I feel like we're in a very different place. And you're not alone. And I try to emphasize that. The other thing I often say to parents is to try to give them an understanding of that is often I point to the back of the building and say, there's no magic machines back there. This is about information. This is about an approach. This is about technique. And there is not one of these things that I am not willing to share with you. I want to help. I want your life to be better. And if you'll hang with me, I'll give you anything and everything that I possibly can. Hold nothing back.
We hear that a lot, like when we're doing this podcast about parents like in similar situations to yourself. And it's always like, I wish I had these resources back then.
Yeah. It would have, I'm not saying it would have made a huge difference, but it would have made a difference in terms of when we intervened. I am very grateful. I make it sound at this moment like somehow my daughter made this huge recovery based upon me. That's not really the case. It was a host of great speech and language pathologists and some great special education teachers that made a huge difference in her life. People that I will be indebted to until the day I die for their kindness and patience with dealing with my daughter. And it is, if we have this kind of a collaborative mindset, it can make a huge difference in so many different ways. And it's one of the things that I'm glad to see our community, in terms of the ABA community, I believe, at least in my experience, has definitely loosened up about in terms of collaboration and co-treating with speech, with occupational therapy, with physical therapy, with special education teachers, with the parents themselves.
Awesome.
So if a parent was in that position where they're having some struggles with their child's behavior, what would be a first step for them?
Well, it's more than that. And this was my mistake, if you would, but it was this mistake of ignorance. When I was dealing with my daughter, I was raised in a very traditional household of punishment-based discipline. And when you find yourself in a situation where what you learned as a child on how to do parenting doesn't work, people turn around and think, "Oh, I have failed my child. Oh, what's wrong with me? I'm not a good parent." And I go, no, time out. What you're missing is some information on a different direction, a different technique. I would never say a better technique or a superior or put myself over them at all. I'd say what you're doing right now is not working. Can I show you an alternative that will possibly make a difference? Let's try it a little bit. A lot of times, it's simply getting past the idea of you're going to look at me as a failure, and I go, been there, done that.
Mhm.
No, I'm just going to tell you something you haven't considered before. Give me a chance, and that's a lot of my approach, especially initially with a parent.
I love that we offer that service. I just think,
Right.
I think some parents may not realize that we provide parent training and, provide those skills on top of the ABA that their kid receives. I just love that we offer that.
Yeah, like even to Richard's point about how we, he'll work with the speech therapist and the occupational therapist, and just a team approach.
There's often a hesitancy with many BCBAs in approaching parent training that I'm going to tell you that I have a little bit of advantage. It's an unfair advantage, but
Right.
It is an advantage. I am a parent and I'm a little older than many other people. And when parents look at me, they go, oh, wait a minute, maybe he has experienced some of the things that I have done or experienced. And I go, look, I've been where I've sat right there in that seat with you, and I'm not gonna talk down to you. I'm not gonna accuse you. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to do any of the things that maybe you're afraid of. I want to help. That's all. And they go, well, maybe all that gray hair is worth something, or what little hair there is gray. But, maybe this is kind of my secret weapon.
Awesome.
What do you think is the biggest tool that other parents are using at home that they've learned in parent training?
Patience, and not to react in the way that probably they have in the past. If someone approaches a child that's struggling with a behavior and they take it personally, my child doesn't like me, my child is just trying to embarrass me in front of family, I don't know why they dislike me so much. These are words I've heard from parents. And I said, well, I can't answer really any of those questions. What I can say is, if you approach it from a dispassionate point of view and ask the right questions, ask the question about what is the function of this behavior? And I explain that to them. And I say, okay, now let's you and I sit here and break this behavior down. What were they trying to do? As they are trying to communicate, because most behavior is just communication, what are they trying to convey to you? Is it that they needed to escape from this environment that is terrifying them because there's too many people here, or something else is going on, and they're trying to back away? And if you're not removing them or providing them comfort in this situation, they're gonna find some way of getting out of there. And or is it something that they need your attention? They're trying to get attention from you, and how are you going to provide that? And I tried to take the passion, the emotion out of the decision-making process of how to respond to these extreme behaviors. And once a parent kind of catches that there is a way to analyze it, applied behavior analysis. Once we pull these behaviors apart and we show them the different pieces, And that's the way you can approach the behavior. Now let's find an intervention. Let's find an alternative behavior. Let's find a way to intervene before the behavior arises, the antecedent interventions.
And what advice would you're coming at it, as you said, not just as a provider but as a parent. So what advice would you give somebody that's only a parent? In other words, they're not a provider. Obviously they're just a regular client.
I think the thing that many parents need to hear, and need to realize at the beginning, is that they are not alone. That there really are some people out there with specialized training that have some answers for these things that are so difficult in your life, and to listen and listen to the passion and the voice of these professionals. Listen to what they have to say, and say, what I have done up till now has not been very successful. We've got some things to share with you, and give it a good college try, and see if this works.
So to summarize, you're not alone. It takes a village, and we're here to help.
And we're here to help.
Well, we always end the podcast with our staff, especially with we have the whole superhero theme within the company, Richard. So we end up asking if you had any superpower, if you could be granted any superhero superpower, what would that be?
I don't know. I think in some ways, I would love to be invisible. I don't know, that kind of sounds strange, but the idea of just being a voice out there that says, give them another hug. But say, good job.
Well, that's a good one.
Let me be invisible. So,
Well, we're glad you were not invisible today and here with us. So thank you for being on the
Thanks
show
for
today.
coming. Yeah.
nice to be here. I've never done one of these by video, and it's kind of interesting. So, thank you for giving me a new experience.
Well, we're glad we could be your first.
Thank you.
Have a great day, Richard.
You too.
Bye-bye.
To continue the conversation, visit the links to our website, Facebook page, or Instagram in the comments.